Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to answer that question. First, I should say the number's a little bit low. I've traveled further than that, and I suspect since my travel log has been mentioned, I should say I got here yesterday, and I'm going to be here 5 days. I'm going back to the United States, which I say only not for your sympathy, but to establish just how important I believe these kinds of conferences can be. Those of you who have heard me speak in the past know I'm going to ask you something, to ask you to do something for me, but I'll hold off on that for just a moment. I'd like to pick up for a moment on what Deputy Secretary Nye said about the rules-based economy that we're trying to establish. Those of you who know the situation in ASEAN know that I don't advocate for businesses per se. I don't do what my colleagues do. What I do is advocate for a system. There were 1,170 meetings in ASEAN last year. Happily, I did not have to go to all of them. But that tells you how seriously the effort is being taken by my ASEAN friends to establish the environment which they are trying to create, the integration effort which they are making. There are many challenges. I don't need to tell very many people in this room what they are. There's sanctity of contract problems, there's transparency problems, there's no bankruptcy protection, there are deficient investor protections. And yet the ambitions that the ASEANs have to integrate by 2015 is compelling. And what we try to do is, of course, assist that process. I can't help but reference, because our portfolio includes not only economics, but like many of my colleagues here, involves a number of things such as the natural sciences. And I'm going to remind everyone that Darwin didn't say the fittest are the ones that survive, it's the ones that change. America changed the face of, was changed by business. Business changed the face of modern America. I make this point repeatedly when I have the opportunity to speak to my ASEAN friends. And I explain in some detail how they did it, or how American business did it starting a long time ago. There is no deep learning here in the region, in the ASEAN region, as to how to do that. And as a consequence, when we have the opportunity to talk about how it actually became, America became what it became, and the world economy became what it became, there is deep interest and actually a greedy desire to understand more. There are, of course, impediments to that process. And here comes the ask. I have seen, since I've been in the region, that my American business friends are wonderful transactional participants in the region. You are not very good strategic participants in the region. And I say that because I am dealing with a portfolio that is as broad as you can possibly imagine, and you should be dealing with the same portfolio. Your CSR should address that, and the way you see the world should address that. And I'll give you only one simple example, because as I look up on the board, I don't see any of our automotive friends up there. I suspect you're in the crowd. And I'm saying this, I can say this about any sector. Those who build cars want to sell them to the evolving middle class, but they're not taking much care as to what the infrastructure is like in the region. They're not paying attention to cities such as Jakarta that's 40% below sea level and floods constantly. They're not focused on what fuel subsidies do by way of the possibility of building more automobiles as a consequence of the middle class not being able to afford cars. They're interested in building a plant, and they're interested in the next quarter or the next year. I need you to think a little bit longer than that if you're going to help us do what we're trying to do. We can't change this system. We can't help our ASEAN friends develop a rules-based approach to the economy without having the people that know what the rules ought to be better than anyone in the world in the conversation. You have to show up, not just simply when you have a deal. You have to show up. You have to be deployed. You have to have people in the region. You have to go out and sing karaoke, and I do that, and I don't like it, but I do it. I do it. And there's always a song for someone. You know, I'm pretty good at John Cougar Mellencamp since I came from Indiana. But you need to be out there in ways which I fear you are not. And let me just end by saying something, because I know that everyone would think I can't have this conversation without talking about connectivity. Connectivity is, of course, the conversation in Southeast Asia, and I always think of the graduate when I hear the word because of the word plastics. Connectivity can mean just about anything to anyone, and it's a hugely important topic. And as a consequence, it's important to understand what it means. When I talk to my ASEAN friends, they mean roads and bridges, ports. And I say to them, well, you have to have rules. You have to have, you know, protections for the investors that you need. It's compelling that the ASEAN Investment Fund has not been spent. It's compelling that the trillions of dollars that are necessary to redevelop this region are not being deployed. and you obviously know the reason why. We are not going to be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish without changing the rules that we need in order to protect us when we do what it is we need to do. It's that simple. And while we can be advocates for this at many of those meetings I described that ASEAN has, you are many more than we are. And as a consequence, we need you to be in the conversation in a very different way than you are. And I welcome any opportunities I have to meet with you personally to discuss how that might be. Thank you.